We have 2 minutes and 37 seconds left. So let's actually let's move a little your body a little bit. Can you stand up? It's really good to move your shoulders. I whenever I sit down in the table, long time, I usually do this shoulder moving. It gives a lot of pain, right? Go to let's change your hand. 2 seconds. I'm sorry, 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here, a lot of pain, right? Here, push your elbow here to the back like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, the other 10. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, all right. Turn the other side and give a massage to your leg. Some people hurt. Okay. All right. Turn the other way. The other way. I feel a little better. Okay, good. Okay. Missionary Peter Kim already prayed, so I will not pray. And whenever I go to lecture in UBF, overseas, and even my class, I usually joke a lot. I used to know a lot of jokes, but I almost forgot. I mean, almost all forgot. But let me tell you one joke. Maybe you heard about it. There was a president named Kim Young-sam. He's from there is a province named Gyeongsang province. So he says noodle, 국수. He said 국시. So he says always. He said to his staff members, "Let's eat not 국수 noodle, but 국시." So his staffs always make fun of him. Anyway, he was invited by Bill Clinton, and his staff really wondered how can we help him to speak English. So they thought about it so many times, and one of the staff said to the president, "I want to teach you 2 sentences. So remember these 2 sentences, and when you meet, use these 2 sentences. One is whenever you meet President Bill Clinton, say, 'How are you?' And then the middle, you just forget about it, and at the end you said, 'Me too.' That was it. So indeed, he flew to Korea to Washington D.C. and visited the White House. And when he met Bill Clinton, instead of saying, 'How are you?' he said, 'Who are you?' And Bill Clinton was so surprised. 'What? Who are you?' 'I'm President of the United States.'
he didn't say, but well, maybe he was joking. So he said, I am a husband of Hillary Clinton. And Mr. Kim says, me too. Anyway, there was, I don't know if it's a real story or not. There was one of story. Okay. So we already learned uh, observation and interpretation. The final one is I'm sorry, observation, interpretation, and application. I'm doing the all three of them. So try to remember, okay? All right. Today we're going to do inductive Bible study workshop, Ruth 2. Okay. All right. So let's start. By the way, what kind of book the book of Ruth is? Narrative history. What is a narrative history is? Real, real people, real place, but how God used these real people in God's redemptive history. Okay, so we know that there's a narrative history. It's not a history. History is a kind of all different. Missionary Peter Kim talk about interpretation. Let me tell you one thing. The book of First King and book of First King and Second King, and the book of First Chronicles and Second Chronicles, both of them was written during the Babylonian captivity. So when you read it, First and Second King, you see really the author severely wrote about the First King and Second King. It's very, when you read it, your heart is just heartbroken. But when you read it, same history book, First Chronicles and Second Chronicles, is quite different. Because the author of First Chronicles and Second Chronicles, we believe that Ezra wrote, he know the people of Israel. They are really, I mean, they are so much beaten by captivity life. So same history, but he really want to encourage people of Israel, because their wounds are so hard. So, for example, there is Hezekiah, king of Judah. The first, second king, he says, he's a terrible king. He deserved the punishment. But same person, Ezra wrote just like this. Even he was such a terrible man, but he listened to God's words and repented, and he come to God. So author's point of view is a little different. Okay, which one you emphasize make big differences. Okay. Anyway, okay. The first thing we always do, divide into paragraphs and give a title to each paragraphs. This is what we call in New Jersey UF factual study. But actually, that's not a really factual study. Factual study, you have to go into observation. That is, at least you have to go in observation and interpretation further to application. But I'm really encourage you, when you do next time factual study, don't stay in here paragraphs. It's just, this is dividing the paragraphs and give titles. That's not enough in factual study. Okay. All right. Anyway, what is the purpose of this division? To see the big picture of passage, which help us to find main idea. Okay. Okay. All right. Sorry. All right, I forgot. Let's read chapter 2. Okay. All right. Can you read maybe 2 verses? Let's read it quickly. Okay, from the missionary Peter. Oh, wait, that's yes. The ends. Okay, the ends. Book of Ruth, chapter 2, verses. Each person read 2 verses. Okay. All right.
Uh, Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered the field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech.
Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you," they answered. Boaz asked the overseer of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?"
The overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She came into the field and has remained here from the morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter.
So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and clean in another field and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled."
At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with the people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel. Under those wings you have come to take refuge."
"May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my lord," she said. "You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servants." At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar." When she sat down with the harvester, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over.
As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to the men, "Let her gather among the sheaves and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her."
So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough.
Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one at whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I worked with today is Boaz," she said. "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead," she added. "That man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers."
Then Ruth the Moabite said, "He even said to me, 'Stay with my workers until they finish harvesting all my grain.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the woman who worked for you, because it's someone else's spirit you might be harmed."
So,
So Ruth stayed close to the woman of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll read one time. Okay, so I divided the paragraphs and give a title. Okay, verse 1 through 3, Ruth gleans in Boaz's field, and 4 through 7, Boaz found out Ruth was walking in the field. And verses 8 through 13, dialogue between Boaz and Ruth. And verses 14 through 16, Boaz invited Ruth for lunch, provided for and protected her. And 16 through 23, dialogue between Naomi and Ruth. Very simple. So we can see what's going on through these paragraphs, right? Dividing paragraphs. Okay. Okay. Observation. Mission Peter already talked about. Okay. I wrote one more time here. Okay. Observation is the act regarding attentively and being alert. This action involves more than physical sight. So it has to do with keen mental awareness. So when you read it, you have to concentrate a little bit. Some people read the Bible, they say they are so sleepy. So you need to wake up a little bit. Okay. When we begin to read the Bible passage, please do not interpret the passage. Once you're thinking, going into interpretation, what happens is you forgot the Bible reading. So please do not try to interpret, okay? Just read it, okay? Just read it several times, okay? And I want to emphasize one more time what the mission Peter Kim says. We need to humble ourselves, concentrate to the facts, okay? Observation, there are 5 W's and 1 H. Not necessarily all the passage has 5 W's and 1 H. Especially H has a problem. So try to find who, what, when, where, why, how. Okay. Also, using the 5 fingers: emphasis, repetition, relationships, comparison, and contrast. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, let's go. Number 1, who appears in the passage? Ruth, Boaz, Naomi, yes. Who else? Workers, harvesters. Harvesters, that's excellent. Who else? You missing one? Yes? Woman of Boaz. Woman of harvesters. There is a woman hired people there, right? Okay. Yeah. Wheat harvesters, yes. Okay, so let's go here. All right. Main character is Boaz, Ruth, and Naomi. We already know. Supporting character is harvesters, overseers, and women of Boaz. They are helping the harvesting. Okay. All right. We should note Boaz as a son of Salmon, who had married Rahab, a Gentile prostitute. Okay, in the 4:21 and Matthew 1:4-5. Okay, so Boaz's family has a history of marrying foreign women. This is a really history that Jewish people think that they are pure blood. That's not very true. They married a lot of Canaanite women in spite of forbidden. Okay, all right, okay. What is happening? What is happening? What is the total story in chapter 2? Harvesting, one day harvest story. You know, Ruth, book of Ruth is a really short period of time. Start from Moab to Jerusalem to the harvest until Ruth married only took 3 months. History is a whole changed within 3 months. Another Bible, let's say Nehemiah, there is at least 20, 30 years of a story is there in Nehemiah. But this book doesn't take much time. So what's happening is only one day in chapter 2, just harvesting, right? Okay, let's go here. Okay. Ruth go out to Glen in turn out to be Boaz's field, right? Okay, that's very important. Boaz encountered Ruth and began to protect and provide her. Boaz noticed Ruth's beauty in her heart. And Naomi realized that Boaz is one of their guardian redeemers. I needed to talk about guardian redeemers. In Korean words, 무르기, 무르기. In the Korean Bible it says 무르기, but this is the meaning of I think 무르기 has such a difficult to understanding. People could not understand it. But meaning is guardian redeemers. God really try to protect the poor people with guardian redeemers. There is 3 duties of guardian redeemers. Okay, 3 duties of guardian redeemers. God's portion in inheritance. Once God gives a property, their tribes have to keep it. But there is many danger that they may lose it, right? So who can help? Their relatives. Okay, all right. So they call the guardian redeemers. God gave his people law that protect their family lines and property. There is 3 things, okay? If the poor sold their property to others, especially foreigners, one of their relatives should redeem them. In other words, buy, and the first 7 years they can keep it, but after 7 years they have to return to original owner. Okay, it's Leviticus 25:25 and 47:48 shows that. Second, if anyone injured or killed, their relative should revenge one who injured and killed. In other words, you have to protect your family members. Not necessarily when you killed by accident, that's a different story. That's a different story when there is accident happens, accidentally injured others, that's a different story, right? But intentionally, there's a problem that relatives have to deal with that. And if a relative should die without leaving a son, his family line should marry his widow and fulfill the duty. We know that story is this here, right? So there is 3 guardian redeemers duties, okay? Very important. Because of this, Jesus was born the line of Judah. Whether you believe or not, let me, if you have Bible, can you look at the Bible, Genesis chapter Genesis chapter 49. Is anyone, can you read Genesis chapter 41, 9 and 10? I'm so 49, 9 and 10. Yes. Right. This is, we don't know exactly but Jacob blessed Judah. You know, Judah is not a first son of Jacob, right? Who is the first son of Jacob? Reuben, right? But Reuben committed a great sin, right? So he lost the first son's position, and it handed to the Judah. And God promised that among the Judah's line, Jesus would be born. That's it says, verse 10, the scepter. What is the scepter means? The king usually is symbol, right? Scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the rulers of staff from between his feet until he to whom it belongs shall come. So God already predicted that Jesus would come in Judah's line. And without guardian redeemers, this line would not be happened. Right? God's promise would not be happens. So God made a rule, very important rule, but the God's line was handed down to Jesus. Okay. Anyway, that's one of the story. So very important. Okay. Okay. When we have to talk about when. When does this take place? Harvest. Okay. All right. All right. What else? When you read it, what else you can find? All right. Let me give you a hint. When Ruth went out to the field in the morning, and then until what? Until evening, right? Okay. In meantime, the Bible clearly says it when, very specifically. All right. Let's go here. Okay. So 1 day period during the harvest time. The verses 1 through 22. Okay. All right. Until the barley and wheat harvest finished, meaning the period between 6 to 7 weeks from late April to early June. Okay, I made the parentheses, springtime, romance buds and blossom. That's my idea. Okay, all right. Ruth went out to field again to glean in the morning. Verse 3 says, daytime, lunchtime, evening time. So we know the character of Ruth in here, right? Okay. All right. Where does this take place? Where? Field. Okay. But is there any other places? Think about it. Okay. All right. What else? Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go. First, start from Naomi's house. Right? Okay. Second, start Boaz's field. Right? Okay. Third, Naomi's house again. And later, Naomi's house and Boaz's field. Right? Okay. All right. So, little bit aware, carefully read it. Okay. So, okay. Now, so the observation we did, there is no H, so I skipped. Okay, so we did the 5 W's. Now we are doing 5 fingers. Okay, fingers. Using the 5 fingers method, the point is not to find comment for each of the 5 fingers. Okay, we just find it. Okay, all right. There is a simple tool to help us analyze the passage. Repeated words. Danny. Lord. Okay, what else? Field. Okay. What else? Clean. Yeah. Clean. What else? The. Isaac, the or a? Okay. All right. Okay, let's go here. Okay. Cleaning is repeated 10 times. Very important words. Clean. I made a comment here in Leviticus 19, 9 through 10, 23, 22. God instructed his people to leave gleaning from their crops at harvest time for the poor and foreigners. Why? God is compassionate. God is compassionate on them. That's why. Okay. Who is the marginalized? Last time we tried to find the definition of marginalized, right? Okay. Marginalized people are poor people, foreigners, fatherless, widows. God cares of poor people. God cares foreigners. God cares fatherless and widows. Clean means when these days there is a machine that you can when wheat field they can cut it by machine. There is nothing left. But in ancient time they used the sickle. When sickles there is remains the wheat, right? So poor people come and pick up. That's also meaning clean, right? Okay. All right. There is a field. Field is Mission Sarah leads as fields 7 times, 8 times. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. And there is a harvester, harvesting. There is 8 times, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 14, 21, 23. We need to understand the agriculture society of the times. Okay. Almost everyone was involved in farming. Okay. And after time of famine, there was a time of blessing when God provide abundant food. Okay. We know that atmosphere was joyful, right? And harvesters should remember God's blessing, give thanks to God, and show concern for the needy, like a poor foreigner out of God's compassion. Okay, so harvesters usually, you are kind of top. There is a danger that you ignore the poor people, right? But they really, God wants the top people have compassion from poor people. Okay. Okay. Continually, the Lord, 5 times. First 4, 2 times, 12, 2 times, 20. In the time of God's blessing, people were happy to bless each other in the name of the Lord. If you look at here, especially Boaz is a truly godly man. When he greeted the people, what did he say first? When he met the harvesters, what did he said to them? Lord be with you. And they respond, Lord be bless you. So we know that Boaz is a really godly man. The greeting was like that. He didn't say, what's up? Okay, all right. So they recognize God as a sovereign ruler and the source of blessing and reward. This is very important in Jewish society. There are so many Jewish festivals, right? One of the festivals is they call barley and wheat harvest. What they do all day long, all day long they pray. Their prayer is very simple. They say, they said, if God would not help us, we cannot harvest. If God does not give good weather, we cannot harvest. If God did not protect the enemies, we cannot harvest. So they say, God is our giver. God blesses. This applies in Jewish society. And because of that, God is truly blessing them. Think about it. What kind of company Jewish owns? Microsoft, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, Facebook, Citigroup, Intel, NBC, ABC, GE, IBM. Of course, they don't believe in God. They believe the God's blessing. You know, any success, no matter how much you money have, but if you don't thank to God and ask a prayer, God will not bless you. Even if you have $1 million, it's a matter of time, all will gone. If God would not bless that. So I really pray that Mission John may pray like this. Mission John joking, okay? So their prayer is always like that. Okay. Contrast. What contrast can you find here in this passage? Think about it. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go here. Contrast social hierarchies. Landlord, overseer, harvester, cleaning woman, and foreigners. Right? Boaz and Ruth, Jew and Gentile, man and woman, man of outstanding, poor widow. Boaz, giver, Ruth, receiver. Okay. Boaz's fields and Naomi's house. Boaz's field was abundant with crops. Naomi's house was poor, needed to receive benefit. All right, there's enough contrast, right? All right, think about it. When we read it, think about it. What kind of contrast there? Okay. All right. Okay. Relationships. What kind of relationship can you find in the passage? We already talked to many things already, right? Say it again. Okay, Boaz and Redeemer. Okay, Boaz and Ruth. Okay. All right, let's go to here. Naomi and Boaz. Naomi husband Elimelech was from same clan as Boaz. Relationship, right? Okay. Naomi and Ruth. Ruth is initiated to go out to clan to support her mother-in-law. That's very hard, right? As a foreigner, you came go to someone else's, there's a foreign land, not his people, foreign land, and go to the glen. Ruth told her mother-in-law what had happened later, right? And they had mutual supportive and genuine trust relationship. Wow, it's truly Naomi and Ruth is such a beautiful mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Israel and Moabites. The author emphasized the fact that Ruth is Moabite. Historically, Moabites were enemies of Israel. We already talked about it yesterday, right? Okay. Emphasis. What can be emphasis in this passage? Okay, we don't have much time, so I will go here. Boaz is characterized as a giver, Ruth as a receiver. Very important emphasis, right? Okay, chapter 2 covers a one-day story in the entire 23 verses. Bible never talk about the one-day story in the whole chapter. That's amazing. But this is very important. That's why, right? Through verses 8 through 16, 9 verses are conversation between Boaz and Ruth. Springtime. Love blossom. Okay. All right. So here, now we have to go to interpretation, which we learned today. As we have observed, keywords in this chapter is glean. In that agricultural society, gleaning was the common practice of marginalized people. They would follow the harvester, pick up any crops that was left over. This was mandated by law of God and shows his concern, the marginalized people. As I said, God is compassionate. So we have to compassionate to the poor people. Okay. In this chapter, we can see how God shows his compassion on the marginalized through relationship Boaz and Ruth. Boaz is the giver, Ruth is the receiver. Okay, so we can find the Boaz's character as a giver. Okay, all right. All right. Boaz, his harvesters greeted each other in the name of the Lord. They fear the Lord, meaning they are living according to Bible teaching, right? They saw each other in the Lord. I didn't look at you with my own perspective, but I am look at you in the name of the Lord. That make a big differences. If I look at all of you with God's name, there is great hope. But if I look at it with my point of view, everybody's no good. All right. So that's the big differences, right? How you look at the people. Are you greeting within the name of the Lord? Do you have a heart of Jesus? Okay. All right. Okay. So she saw. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I went too far. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. In the time of George, there is still people who feared God. Okay. There is people. God used those people. Okay. So he noticed an unknown young woman who was working his field. This indicates that he paid attention to his servant and knew them well. His first response was to take care of her. Okay? So he has such a Christ character. Boaz has a Christ character. Okay? All right. After hearing she was a Moabite, he didn't say, get out of my field. But what did she say? She called her my daughter and permitted her to walk in his field. He saw her with a father's heart and treated her like a family member without discrimination. She was vulnerable, but he protected her and provided her a water for her. In this Middle East, drinking water is scarce, very vital and precious. He was generous. He was mindful and kind, had compassionate heart for poor and foreigners. Okay. He recognized Ruth's sacrifice and commitment in leaving her own family, care for Naomi and her own homeland to live in a different culture. He was also mindful of the fact that he was widow. He did not view her through eyes of religious prejudice, but based on common humanity. Okay, so we have to have a basic humanity, right? All right. Finally, he blessed Ruth in the name of the Lord. He knew God's heart of blessing for anyone who comes to him by faith. He knew that God is not only the God of Israel, but the God of Gentiles too. Basically, we are Gentiles, right? Okay. He knew that God rewards those who please him. Okay. Gracious invitation to lunch fellowship. Ruth was not a harvest worker, right? But she had not earned the right to eat lunch. But Boaz invited her to the same meal as the harvesters. This is grace, right? Okay. This glimpse of Jesus' invitation to come eat with him and to attend weddings of the Lamb. I thought about it. This passage, I realized we are so privileged, not because we have done something great, not because we are Jews. We need a yarmulke to wear the, but we are invited by Jesus. Jesus' invitation. That's a great privilege. So we can also find Ruth's character as a receiver. This made her life completely different. Okay. Okay. She took the initiative to provide her mother-in-law instead of depending on her. She's a foreigner, just came. She could just sit down and waiting for her mother-in-law go out and clean, but she did not. Okay, it was not easy for her to do this in the new environment as a foreigner, but she was courageous. She was not passive or lazy. She had no sense of entitlement. Okay, she's also a hardworking woman. She worked morning to now, except short rest. The receiver should not have a bag mentality. I'm poor, so you feed me. No. She worked hard. She could do what she could do. Okay. She was humble. When Boaz says, notice her, she bowed down to face to the ground. Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner? She knew exactly who she was, foreigner. May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord. You have put me easy by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servant. So she is such a humble woman. But she didn't have any beggar mentality at all. We don't know, we know now why God used such a woman, right? Okay. Right. So we can also find more. She knew who she was. She was a foreigner, did not deserve to receive favor. Yet when it was offered, she was not offended. Here is, I don't need that. Right? She was not offended. She humbly, graciously received it till she did not take Boaz's favor for granted. So there's a basic attitude. Okay. Though she felt unworthy to receive it, she continued to ask it, to find the favor. She also opened her heart and expressed her genuine feeling that Boaz's word had put her at ease. Okay? She says ease, speaking. She was healthy and strong enough to carry 30 pounds of grain back to Naomi's house. She's a very healthy woman. That's why as soon as she got married, she had Obed. Right? So she was mindful of her mother-in-law. 30 pounds is how many kilograms? It says Bible, 13 kilograms. She just carried, no problem. Healthy woman. Okay, this is my idea. Okay, Boaz and Ruth as a type of Christ and us. Okay, spiritually speaking, we are like Moabites, outsiders and sinners, like Ruth, who were excluded from citizenship in Israel and foreigner to the covenant of the promise, without hope, without God in the world. But our lives were meaningless and fruitless. We are doomed to perish. But Christ came into the world to care for us out of his great mercy. He taught the word of life and give us meaning and purpose of life. He comforted and encouraged us and give us living hope of the kingdom of God. Finally, he died on the for our sins on the cross, redeemed us from the power of sin and death and Satan. In this way, he demonstrates God's love for us. He changed our status to be his beloved children, member of God's household, heir of his kingdom. He gave all this privilege, blessing freely by his grace alone. Indeed, we are foreigners. We are not deserved God's grace and love. But because of Jesus, we become God's family members, heir of God, co-heir with Christ. Okay, in short, Christ redeemed us, so saved us from our sins. So, oh, sorry. Okay, okay, all right. So interpretation. So what do you learn from Boaz? I mean, your point of view. I will show you my point of view. Generous, yes. Grace, compassionate to the marginalized people, yes. Okay, I wrote a little more. Boaz has God's character, gentleness, humility, understanding, kindness, compassion, generosity. No favoritism, but embrace all. Okay, all right. Boaz is the type of Messiah initiating care for needy people. Jesus initiated salvation work by humbling himself and coming into the world. He always saw people with compassionate heart. Jesus understands weak and vulnerable people and care for them. He did not break the bruised reed or snuff out smoldering wick. Jesus did not show favoritism, but embrace all who come to him. We have to realize that there is no favoritism in God. You sin, God condemns. Yet we come to God and repent. He receives it as we are. That's difference. Okay, what do you learn from Ruth? Healthy woman. Oh, okay. That's my interpretation. Don't take it too hard. Humble. Yes. What else? Okay. Okay. I wrote it too. She shows us how to receive favor or grace with humility and faith and thanksgiving. She knew who she was, foreigner, poor, widow, who had no claim on Israelite society. But she was not offended due to her pride. When favor was offered to her, nor did she take advantage of people's kindness or have a beggar mindset. Rather, she was hardworking, thankful, mindful of others. Right. I think Americans are generally very proud, right? Right. So we have to learn from the Ruth. Okay. Most of all, what can we learn about who God is? Lord. Okay. God is Lord. Yes, that's absolutely true. All right. Okay. I wrote 5 of them. Okay. The atmosphere of harvest due to divine blessing shows us that God restores his people to bless after time of suffering through famine. Why did God give us a famine in that time? In order to discipline, right? Right. So when your things are doesn't go well, when your family and everything do not go well, what you do? Curse God? Okay. Right. Think about it as God's discipline. Then life completely will change. And you have a great joy in your heart. And the grace of God and love are abundant in your heart. Okay. God leads those who seek him to receive his favor, as God led Ruth to Boaz's field. Okay. Receiving favor is not a shame, yet we should not take it for granted. Okay. All right. God protect, provide for, and bless and rewards those who come under his wings of grace. Okay. This guardian redeemer system, God's redemptive history could be continued, and Jesus was born in the line of Judah according to his promise. Already says in Genesis. Okay, God does not show favoritism, but gives grace to those who come to him by faith. Don't ever say, I'm born this way, so I cannot change. No. Okay, all right. So God is not only God of God is not only God of Israel, but of Gentile too. Okay, Naomi realized that God has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. The word kindness, we already talked about yesterday, hesed in Hebrew. Its first usage occurred in chapter 1, verse 8. I made some mistake. It's typed wrong. In verse 22, appear again in chapter 3, verse 10. Naomi had received the love from God through his divine discipline, but she did not harbor a grudge against God. Rather, she realized that God is kind and faithful to those who turn back to him. Through this, we can see God is pouring his grace on his people from generation. So we also see deep comfort for the poor old widow, and he turned his deep despair into the hope. I think I was typed while I was sleeping. Anyway, we can learn so many things if you have a mind of inductive Bible study way. You can find so many things. Once the observation, once you do the interpretation, then you already can write the messages and edit the final application. Then it works, right? So this is a very powerful tool to inherit it from Mother Berry to our ministry. That even though you may think it's not useful, you may not think it's not useful, but take it, really useful for you. Okay, let me pray and finish. Heavenly Father, we praise and thank you for your grace upon God's redemptive history. Ruth was poor, foreigner, Moabite. She could not receive any benefit from God. But when she was humble, she could receive God's favor.